Hello, and welcome to episode 4 in our Commerce Reimagined series, highlighting change makers, visionaries, and the people who are transforming the way we are defining commerce in this changing world. I am Beth Ann Kaminkow, and I'm excited to introduce today our speaker. She is Nicole Yershon. She is the founder of the NY Collective, and Nicole is one of Drum's 25 women who have shaped the digital industry. She is also one of Wired Magazine's Top 100, and she was named that in their first annual Wired Magazine's Top 100 issue for Britain Digital Power Brokers. She was the founder of Ogilvy Labs and was at Ogilvy for many years. And as most recently in the last few years, written a wonderful best-selling book called Rough Diamond, which is all about turning disruption into advantage in business and in life. So can't imagine a more appropriate topic for us to be talking about today and applying to what we're going through. Just a few of the clients that she has worked with over the years have included Danone, Havas, Amex, IBM, BP, London Business School, EY, Accenture, Pfizer. So a great spectrum of experiences to draw from too. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. That was brilliantly introduced. Thank you.
You're welcome. So like when we get into this topic today, obviously we're all reading and absorbing and digesting so much information right now. And many of us think about times in our career when we think to ourselves, wow, I wish we had hit the gas in that moment. I wish we had leaned more into business transformation, digital innovation, the stuff that sometimes we sideline and we hit pause on and we don't think is so critical to our business in the here and now, but we think it will be for the future, so we hit delay. And then you take a moment like what just happened and you realize that the companies that have been delaying and sidelining certain activity are probably least capable of dealing with what we have in front of us right now. And the companies that have taken kind of the investments and been more forward leaning and looking are probably being served better. So we're going to get into in this conversation, more of the how-to around business transformation. Those are big ideas, and you really help us understand like what does it take to start thinking about business transformation. But I'd first like to talk about disruption. We're going through a massive disruption. Your book talks about the idea of disruption a lot. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about what does disruption mean, and how do you see ourselves experiencing it right now, given the current crisis?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think the biggest, there's two words that always spring to my mind when we're talking about disruption is uncertainty, and the fact that there's uncertainty in the world and full of disinformation and noise and apathy. So, and it's how anybody really kind of works through it. And it's not a nice feeling. It feels uncomfortable. You kind of get a weird sensation in your tummy and you just want things to go back to normal. And it takes a while for there to be kind of any acceptance. And so I think that they're the main things that I think about in terms of raw material. When we talk about disruption, it's an uncomfortable feeling, and no one has been there before. And it takes a maverick to clear a path for what's going to happen in the future. But it also takes leadership to clear that path for that maverick to come through in testing and learning and trialing new things to try and make things a little bit quicker, better, stronger, faster than it was.
So a lot of this also is about kind of the audiences that we serve, whether that be to what you're talking about right now, an employee base, whether that be professional service firms with our clients, with our partner agencies. It also is about how do we serve consumer behavior, right? And how are we responsive to the changes in consumer behavior? Can you talk a little bit about what we're seeing there and how you see good examples or not so good examples of companies that are really understanding the changes that are taking place for the consumers that they serve and truly being consumer centric in the ways that they're responding to this disruption right now?
Yeah, I think a leadership mindset, going back to leadership again, is something that is needed at this time, and there are the companies or the brands that are the most innovative, and that they have repurposed their plants to help with PPE or turn their whole factories around to start to build solutions. There are people that actually take action, make a stand, and just roll their sleeves up and do it, as opposed to have meeting after meeting and go through the process of a very large organization as to how to pivot or how to change. What I've really noticed is the little guys that are making those big changes. So, you know, we've been big advocates and users of Amazon Fresh for a long time, and they were no help to us during this pandemic at all. And it was the little places called Farm Drop, for instance, that all of a sudden there's a website up, and they were B2B, and now all of a sudden they're B2C, and their whole business is now not representing restaurants and cafes. They're now delivering directly to consumer very quickly, very efficiently, and they're the ones that have been able to pivot very quickly.
And you know, I love the theme that you're bringing into this too, which is around leadership, and some of this is kind of top-down vision. And I also like the fact that this is about activism, not just protest. So yeah. Actions truly speak louder than words. And if we take that into what we're seeing at a leadership global level, there are some leaders that are performing so incredibly well that maybe we wouldn't have even seen on the world stage before, but they have really risen. I know that we're both mutual fans of the Prime Minister of New Zealand and how she has been able to manage through this crisis, and her communication style, and then also how she follows that through with action. Tell us a little bit about both your experience observing someone like that, but then also what the lessons in that are for us from a corporate standpoint.
We're not in the past, especially, and I know I'm talking from my experience with large organizations, is that we're not measured on soft skills. We're not measured on EQ or things that will help employees kind of call to action. If we take the Prime Minister of New Zealand, she is such a brilliant example of just immediately doing the right thing. She has this emotional intelligence, this EQ, that she didn't wait to have podiums and things, you know, done in the old way with broadcasters and makeup artists and God knows what else. She literally just took to her home where her family was. She had a phone in her hand, and she just spoke to the people on Facebook. And she was able to pull together a whole country where they now have no more COVID cases, and try to reimagine how they're going to lead in the future. There also needs to be some preparedness, which I don't think that they've had, because let's face it, the business model for the industry, or for any industries actually, be it accountants or legal, nothing's changed in many years, and yet everything has changed with technology. You know, yet the business models haven't changed. It's still, you know, churning out numbers, Excel spreadsheet, and actually there's a new way that we need to measure success now, and that isn't by fear of numbers.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that. I do think it's a trick of the trade to figure out how you make the soft skills measurable in hard facts, and aligning those things is always going to be really important from a business, especially businesses that are going after commercial KPIs. Yeah. We can maybe get into that in a little bit. I also want to talk.
Also, as a leader, she listens. Mm-hmm. So that listening quality means she's not trying to solve the wrong problem really well. Mm-hmm. So she's actually listening to her people. She's got good people around her. She's empathetic. Therefore, she understands the people she's listening to. She has an understanding of what it must be like to be in their situation. So then you have those words that we do hear bandied around, but they're so relevant. You know, you've got genuine authenticity and integrity in everything that she does and she says. And I think that's probably, it's not rocket science, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, but it seems to be something that so few leaders seem to have, which is that listening quality.
So beyond the leader at the top, we both have talked a lot about bringing a more entrepreneurial maverick behavior into companies and corporations and agencies. And so some of that is like a very entrepreneurial spirit, because we're working oftentimes for these big public companies. And it's blending that ability to still be entrepreneurial inside, even though you have these strong accountabilities that sometimes are measured on monthly, quarterly basis.
Yeah.
So given your experience also in more working with and inside more traditional companies, and you think about kind of the 21st century skill and structure that's needed for agencies to continue to flourish and thrive. You've also worked with a lot of consulting firms. What would you say some of those skills are? What is the culture that has to be built in order to enable this new type of leadership to really surface?
I think having approval at the top, that they don't know how it's going to turn out, and for them to be okay with that, and that test and learn attitude, and putting someone in place who has that entrepreneurial spirit. There's a lot of creativity that's needed, that you just keep trying a different way, or you're out there, or you're understanding what other people are doing, and you're bringing it back in. So you're not in a silo of we've always done it this way, and you're surrounding yourself with the same people who have always done it that way. You get yourself out of your comfort zone. I think a good example of that was with McLaren and the NHS. You know, who would have ordinarily put those two together as a collaborative team? But it takes someone who understands people outside of an industry, who actually can spot those connections. And it's the creativity, the role of a super connector, it's the mindset, it's personality. So wit and smart, and a visible personality, not someone that is kind of put in the basement as the don't let the lunatics take over the asylum type thing. I always had this kind of Robin Hood, you know, bring everyone with me, who wants to come with me to affect some change. I think there's a lot of ways in which you can analyze data, in terms of what's working, what's not working. I think also media is really good in cracking the code as to how to tell stories. Not just stories on mainstream media, but stories in internal communications, kind of, because there's a lot of things that aren't said, which then has the brain do 2 + 2 = 5. And then people makes them even more scared of all of this, you know, change happening around them. And it's not something that we really enjoy, change. It's not that you kind of wake up one day and you think, oh, I really like this. We're programmed with the amygdala to respond to fear. But there are certain people who are better at it. That's why the emotional intelligence testing is good, because then you can find the ones that are better at predisposed to anarchy or change or kind of really creative thinking, and you find them and you empower them and you set their KPIs for their personalities. And then there are other people who are the number crunchers, where they do need to deliver upon a P&L. I mean, I remember very clearly, I set very different objectives when I was running the innovation lab. So mine wasn't for a P&L. I ran it as an R&D facility specifically. So my ways to that I would measure, I called them my 6 R's. So as long as you showed a little bit of revenue, and that was to experiment, and I did that by working very closely with Rory Sutherland at the time, and I would offer him out for speaking sessions, and I agreed with him that the money I got for him to speak would come into our lab and would be used for R&D. Now that's being creative, that's getting money in where there was no money. And that's that entrepreneurial spirit, that you're treating the business as if it were your own. So revenue was one of them, a little bit. Reputation. So therefore, all the things we were doing within the labs, there was really amazing PR and also awards, because that's how the agency was measured. So I took that into account. So revenue, reputation, retention of existing staff, because people were working, doing interesting stuff with the labs that was over and above their day job. So if we were doing a semester of learning on data or behavior change, I'd send emails around saying, who's interested in that? You know, who would really like to know more? And they would put their hands up across the group. And I work with geometry actually a lot with those kind of things. and they would work with me for those 6 months of that semester, and we would send them to events and various different things, and all their learning was then pushed onto their groups and teams. So revenue, reputation, retention of existing staff, recruitment of new diverse talent, which was the Rough Diamond program, relationships, that's the black book of seeing 10 to 15 different companies every single week, depending on what our semester of learning was, and bringing all that amazing information from outside inside, and responsibility, giving back. So I had clearly defined measures of success that helped with, I guess, making sure that that we stayed afloat, and we kept it going probably for about 16 years. So it was good leadership who allowed a maverick behavior, allowed for the creativity, allowed for me doing things sometimes that were under the radar and they didn't know about until it was finished and done. And then I could explain it with the power of doing.
Excellent. So a couple of just rapid fire questions to close us on. One is, like you think about Innovation Lab, it usually sounds like it's this small group on the fringes. Are you thinking fringes in the future? Or are you thinking core of the company going forward?
Definitely core of the company going forward, but not the whole company. It's not all or nothing. And it's also not part of a P&L. It's not there to make money. An innovation lab, or it's research and development. You don't even, like I didn't even need money to run it. I found the money myself in entrepreneurial ways. So but I think it is a case of making sure it is at the core, but there are other changes that need to go with it that changes the business model. So it might be not always running in the way that the business is run. It might be a leverage business model. So pull people in when and if you need them, rather than having 1 million people sitting at their desks and paying salaries. It might be looking at how they engage with HR and how they're recruiting people. So you recruit a very different type of personality. So, but that will all be at the core, not at the fringes.
And then business transformation, is this something that, even though we're facing hard times ahead as companies and we're probably trying to get a little bit more restrained in our spend, is this something that we lean into right now, or do we just give it a couple more months or a few more months to really assess what the right timing would be?
There's never the right time. It's like when you're going to have a baby. Nothing can prepare you, and there is never a right time, but you need to find that person within your organization, or work with someone like me who can inspire and educate and bring in the right thinking. And it's also, it's not a short-term fix. You're not going to be able to say in 1 month's time, oh, is it done yet? I remember in the very early days, Ogilvy in 2000, and I was brought in to bring them into the 21st century, to move them from an analog world to a digital world. The world was starting to go crazy online, and Ogilvy was doing mainly paper. It was like the civil service. So I put in a workflow system, finance system, digital asset management system, digital delivery, get rid of tapes, get rid of couriers. Now, all those things took time and had to have the right people buy in. And you had to find those people and audit the company efficiently to find your tribe, if you like. So, it's not going to happen overnight. But when you look back over, say, a year and you see what's been accomplished, then you can build on it and keep building. But it's not going to be something that is going to satisfy shareholders the next quarter. And it's certainly not going to satisfy in terms of getting money in for a P&L.
So, favorite quote from Nicole Yershon's book, Rough Diamond?
Oh, God. That's put me on the spot. I can't remember at all. My whole thing is just about making things happen. Everyone has an idea. There are millions of ideas. We're not short of ideas as to how to innovate. It's the ones that can take it to something that is tangible, that has made something happen. There'll always be naysayers saying, oh, no, that's no good. But where were those naysayers in making those things happen? They're not the right people for the job. when you're talking about innovating and looking at different ways of doing things, then they're the ones you need to have an understanding. It's like it's the Edward de Bono hat theory. So you have lots of hats in the room to make sure that you make something happen. So you've got to have a black hat in the room. That's the negative, that's the realist, that's the, they're the kind of people that you've got to overcome. And then if you overcome all of those obstacles, then you know that it's going to be a success. And the more the pain you have with those kind of jobs, the better it is. Don't ask me why. I guess if it was, here's a quote, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Love it. Well said. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Nicole. You have been a wealth of wisdom, and we appreciate your time. I'm sure those out there that want to follow you, one, you can still get your book on Amazon, and two, go on LinkedIn and Twitter and start following Nicole Yershon, or reach out directly if you would like to work with her. It's been lovely speaking with you, and for everyone else too, please start to follow Geometry Global and check out our Commerce Reimagined series. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.